we could not have more favorable political environment for this war to get to the end. It's not only Tomahawks, different types of other long-range and short-range missiles.
The European Union stands with Ukraine, but also will stand with Ukraine as long as it takes.
Ukrainians are defending not only the land, but also its way of life, its identity, its faith, and first and foremost, its families.
Good morning, everyone. I'm David Ignatius, a foreign affairs columnist for the Washington Post. It's my great pleasure to be here this morning with Ukraine's new ambassador to Washington, Olga Stefanishyna. She's been here since August, and we're going to be able to talk both about news that's breaking today about Ukraine and also about the background of this terrible war that she and her family have been living through. Madam Ambassador, welcome. Let me begin by asking about what's in the news today. The reports are that President Trump and his emissaries have developed a new 28-point peace plan for Ukraine. The reports say that this plan would require Ukraine not simply to give up occupied territory to Russia, but to give up territory in Donetsk that Russia has not yet taken. According to some reports, there would be limits on what Ukrainians' military force could be after a peace settlement. So I want to ask you, as directly as I can, what your government's reaction is to this new effort.
Well, thank you, David, and I'm deeply touched with this video. I didn't know Washington Post prepared that. Thank you. So there were like a lot of information about 28-point peace plan presented by Special Envoy Witkov, but in fact it is today that my president have confirmed that he accepted the plan, or the ideas, as it's called as of today, on how to end the war. And he received it from Secretary of Army Driscoll, who came to Kyiv for a 2-day visit. So, this was done in a spirit of like cooperation and engagement. But speaking about 28 points plan, onboarding the Russian suggestions, there's no even point in seeing it because there's nothing new there. The narrative of Russians is around the same things, but going around is not something that really putting Russians over the table. So we consider that the very fact that we have a visit of Secretary of Army Driscoll to Kyiv and investing his time and the time of his military team in Ukraine, assessing the situation on the front, getting the report, getting the knowledge of the innovations on the front, having a long and substantial conversation with my president and the broader military cabinet, and providing the ideas how to start ending the war. This is the start of a good process. I'm very positive here, not because I'm an optimist or this was a very good plan, but because I'm confident about Ukraine. No miracles happened in 3.5 years of the war. Nobody in the world invented a miraculous way of ending the war, but the miracle was that Ukraine stands. And Ukraine remains independent and sovereign, even being occupied. That's very easy. But at the same time, Ukrainians keep on dying, families keep on facing losses, and if we're finally having the leadership of President of the United States, and this leadership is backed up by a real process. I think this is serious. So we are optimistic because we do not doubt ourselves, and we are happy to do whatever we can to support President Trump's efforts to end the war.
So that's a significant and positive statement. I want to ask, as this new process of negotiation begins, negotiations are about give and take always, but at this starting point, what are Ukraine's red lines, the things that you really are not prepared to make concessions on?
Well, I think these are like things which have been already said and obvious. The territorial integrity of Ukraine and changing of Ukrainian borders is not something which is, should be put on a table. We are speaking on stopping on the existing line. This is something my president said when he was here in Washington after the meeting with President Trump. There might be more detailed conversations on what the stopping line is, but this is part of this dialogue already at this point. But speaking that Ukraine will, change the borders and would say that, Russia succeeded in this military aggression. This is not something that could be accepted anyways. And of course, whatever would threaten Ukraine's independence and will enable Russia to even think of having another aggression, this is something not acceptable. But also, they're speaking about 28 Russian points. They're you can speak of every point, and if you would take it seriously, this would not make too much sense. So I think we're concentrating mostly on, again, we're confident in ourselves. We're backing up the leadership of President Trump. But what I'm personally afraid of, that, Russians never committed to. So the weakness of Russians is that when you're sitting with them face to face, they're always avoiding, face-to-face conversation and commitment. That's why they're always around the process. So, my biggest fear is that Russians would just continue with these delays and playing the game's tactics. Even if you force, sort of a Kirill Dmitriev to bring you a Russian plan on a piece of paper, they could just turn a blind eye and say that it never existed. So it should be a combination of instruments. The real dialogue is there, but also the pressure should continue.
And one more question about today's news before we step back. The issue now, and since negotiations began in part, is how Ukraine's security will be protected after a peace agreement is made. And so the issue of security guarantees has always been central. As you begin this new effort, just tell us what Ukraine would feel is necessary to be sure that it would be safe behind whatever line is finally negotiated.
I don't have too much freedom speaking about this publicly right now because, this plan has just been presented to my president. This is a new momentum, and, every public communication is very, fragile. But security guarantees is something that's been discussed not only between Ukraine and the United States, also by European allies. So this is definitely broader, Ukraine, American, European effort. This implies partially the discussion about military presence, deterrence forces, let's say, on the territory of Ukraine, and air defense and many other capabilities which disable, from further attacks or next attacks. But also these are legal commitments at the level of the European and potentially American allies, and it should be something which is equal to what is granted for the NATO allies.
So that's a key point, that it should be equal to what NATO allies get. And when you spoke of deterrent forces, I'm assuming that you mean that at least going into the negotiations, you'd like the European countries to be able to have boots on the ground in Ukraine supporting your efforts to keep the peace. Is that right?
Yeah, this is part of the discussion. So again, I don't have a lot of liberty, just to throw some points. So this has been a part of the discussion. This is something which is structured in some documents prepared by the coalition of willing, and it's to be discussed further.
Okay. So let's pull the camera back. As you said earlier, it's a miracle that Ukraine has survived against this onslaught. You're about to enter your fourth winter of war, and from what we know, it's going to be a difficult winter. It's going to be a cold winter in Kyiv. I want to just ask you to share with this audience what that's going to be like for families in Ukraine as they go through this winter, go through
Sorry,
December.
can I just ask to take these photos?
Yes, we should take that
it's
down.
very not comfortable, Sorry.
Yes, so those are disturbing to all of us, and especially to you, and I'm sure to people in Ukraine as they watch this. So, just help us think about what this winter is going to be like for people in Ukraine, and what the spirit is that will help people get through this winter, assuming there's no peace.
Thank you. I'm sorry, we're just sitting in the suits, on a sofa, and putting this picture
Yes.
on a backdrop, so it's not very comfortable. So this is probably the hardest winter of all these 4 years. And I was yesterday recalling a group of my friends who just climbed the Kilimanjaro. These were like 4 veterans. They are amputees, and they made it to Kilimanjaro. And after every day, they said, so while climbing, surviving through one day, you know that the next day would only be harder. So, and when you're finally making it to the top, it means that, every time it's getting harder and harder. So I think every week of this winter would be harder and harder. What I know about the logic is that under any logic circumstances, it would not be possible to survive the winter because Russians, heavily bombing the infrastructure. They know what they are bombing, and they know what goals they are trying to pursue. It's total demoralization of population, depriving Ukrainians of the ability basically to live in a country, but also depriving economy from functioning. But at the same time, speaking about Ukrainians in my country, I know that we will survive this winter as we survived many other things, not only over these 3.5 years, but over the centuries before. But the level of destruction would be tremendous. And as you can compare the deep strikes Ukraine conducts on the territory of Russian Federation, you see only the information about the deep strike and the target it achieved. In Ukraine, you see the pictures like that, with residential houses killed, kindergartens bombed, facilities and productions destroyed, not only energy infrastructure. So this would be a devastating winter. Although we managed to, agree on procurement of American LNG and providing it to Ukraine, we managed to agree on mobilizing resources for recovery and restoration of equipment. But this is a devastating winter, and this so far brings a lot of losses. So we need more air defense, and we need not only to sit over the table and negotiate, but also enable us to defend ourselves throughout this process.
So you're an example of the spirit that's allowed Ukrainians to get through the terrible winters and the winter to come. You're a mother with 2 young children who were with you in Kyiv until you came here in August as ambassador. Give us a sense of what it's like to be raising your kids our correspondent who spoke with you in Kyiv said you have your car rigged up with pillows and blankets in case the air raid sirens go off. Just give this audience a sense of what it's like for you as a mom and just living in Kyiv under this attack.
Well, I mean, this is a very, very complicated town here in Washington. Everything is so personal, you know. In Ukraine, it was really different because I mean, it was very, very much divided part of my professional work, the public work, and my family. And now it's like you all people are forcing to combine it. So yeah. I mean, that's very hard to explain because whatever I could be like speaking here would not sound really normal. But the wartime really forces you to make tough decisions. So it's a decision whether you continue to serve your country and remain a mother, because in the first months of war, my kids fled with their grandparents to Slovakia. They stayed there for a couple of days, a month. And then, you know, I came, when we didn't know, you know, whether, you know, Kyiv will stand. These were like the first weeks of the war. So, and I didn't, you know, first I didn't know whether I will see them again ever, you know. So this is something, you know, nobody could really want to be related to. But then when I knew that I may see them again, I came to Bratislava, and I saw that they start having different habits, you know. So they start forgetting, you know, our life. So I decided to be a mother, and I brought them to Kyiv. So, and you know, we had this life as we had it, but we remained as family.
So I thank you.
Sorry. David, come on.
I'm looking in my pocket for my Kleenex. I don't.
That's
I don't
all right.
have it, but thank you for sharing that. And I don't mean to take you into ground.
It's okay.
That's too personal.
This is Washington's fault, you know. So it's like, you cannot.
You know, that's something.
It's not me.
We would all agree
on.
So. Let me turn to another question about your past work. Before you came here as ambassador, you were deputy prime minister, very close to President Zelensky, and you were charged with negotiations with Europe. That was your portfolio. And so, you know, whenever people ask me what this war is about, I always answer, well, it's about Ukraine's desire to be part of Europe and Russia's refusal to allow that. That's the core issue. And so I want to ask, when this war ends, soon we hope, how quickly do you think Ukraine can move towards the European Union? And what preparations did you make in your previous job and are making now to speed that up?
Well, this has been a very important process for all Ukrainians because, as you remember, the annexation of Crimea started after president of Ukraine just escaped the country after he, you know, tried to force the course of the country, you know, from the European direction to, you know, to sustain it in this, you know, post-Soviet, you know, gray zone. So people stood up on the streets for their way of life because Europe for Ukrainians is about justice, is about democracy, about so many processes, and European Union is about prosperity and sustainability. And over these years, Ukraine has done so much to turn its country to a vibrant democracy, to serve the people. And we have created a lot of institutions. We have transferred a lot of areas of economy to a market-based competitive framework. We have got rid of a Soviet regulations, and we're open to a lot of opportunities. And even on 24th of February, when Ukraine was under attacks, it was the same day when we cut off the Russian electricity grid. And we turned to European one. So this is very symbolic. This was happening exactly from night of 23rd to 24th of February. So this is existential because that gives Ukrainian people the ability to feel safe, that they do not have to stand up, and go on the streets to protect their state every time. So this is very important, and we started the accession process to join the European Union, and we engaged around 4,000 people into the accession process. This is how big it is throughout the war. So you have heard also that for Ukraine's membership to European Union is part of the security guarantees as well.
So I want to ask you about the part of your job that's challenging and important, and that's reaching out to Americans who are not already supporters of Ukraine, and trying to encourage them to take more of an interest in your country. Conservatives who may be supporters of the president, who just don't have Ukraine as an issue. How are you trying to do that, and how's it going?
Well, I think, thank you for reaching out with this question. If you would look to this from the perspective of, regular diplomatic office, right? So usually when you want to do nice things, meeting your friends, having good conversations, this is something you can do, if you're coming from a different country, let's say. Here, I think it's a normal political job, because it's not only that I have the position of the ambassador, I also have a mission, and I'm in a country, and your president has made a personal commitment to end the war. And not people who are decision makers, whether it's like White House or Department of State or Congress or Senate or think tanks or journalists or influencers. So some people who can influence the decision and who can, help Ukraine and President Trump with reaching this goal. These are not necessarily people who are your friends. But if they have something to do to bring us closer to the end of the war, this is what matters. So, and I think having this experience of, being in a government for the years of war gives a lot of stamina to that. Because, when you need your country to be part of the European Union, to get necessary financing to survive, you can really go and cry to your pillow that it was not a nice person, but then you need to get what you need from this person, So, but then you can cry afterwards.
Speaking of that, you were in the Oval Office in February of this year with President Zelensky. I think we all remember the scene, things pretty obviously were off track in that meeting. From what you said this morning, very supportive of President Trump's efforts to try to continue with negotiations. It sounds like things are more on track now. But talk about your government's, President Zelensky's relationship today with President Trump.
Good. I don't have to comment about February.
Okay, fair enough. I think a lot has been said about that already.
Yeah. So this is definitely whatever it is assessed by different sides. This was definitely historical for everybody who are in this office.
Hard to forget.
Yeah. it's really hard to speak about the personal relations, but I think the fundamental word here when it relates to my president is trust. So my president is open and frank on whatever discussion is, and I think that there is a confidence that like whenever my president sits over the table or leaves the table, he sticks to what he said, and sometimes even when the discussions are not that easy, they're like open and frank. And I think this is priceless, and this is the fundamental basis of the whole dialogues we're having here. And again, there's been like a lot of different processes, and sometimes it's really hard to match between the messages we hear from President Trump and the White House, him talking to American audience, to American people, to people here, and to match it with how it is heard in Ukraine. And sometimes it's hurting people. It may hurt us, but there's so much understanding and knowledge that should be grown.
So I want to ask about a difficult subject for your president, and that is dealing with allegations of and evidence of corruption in Ukraine. This week there's been a big investigation that's been reported about your nuclear energy company, Energetom, I think it's called. 6 people have been arrested. The Minister of Justice has been fired. Tell us, when members of Congress ask you, Madam Ambassador, what about corruption in Ukraine? What's President Zelensky doing about it? How do you answer that question?
Well, I was a justice minister before in the government, and again, I was coordinating the reforms related to the rule of law and fight against corruption. So I mean, this could be a really long answer, but cutting this long story short, I think there are number of elements which I want to go out, publicly saying. First, this is an investigation conducted by the institutions created by Ukrainian government, who are independent, and this is solely Ukrainian effort. So it's not the information or the data we received from abroad and from some colleagues. So this is, a domestic product. So this is important. So secondly, there were no impunity to anyone around who were on this, files or information. Everybody who were related to that were dismissed. The parliament voted and retired them, and president has been vocal every day since. So he wasn't really letting go the situation after dismiss. He was really communicating every day the effort he was trying to take to that. But also this is really something that hit it very hard, because we spend a lot of time to get rid of oligarchic economy that has taken years. We have spent a lot of time creating the institutions like anti-corruption court, law enforcement, whatever needed for that. And then we thought that all the framework is there, and and let them just do their job, right? And we didn't probably thought that it could really hit so hard. But I think the right reading of that it was exposed, it was mitigated. Those who are guilty should be punished and convicted. But second, it's a fresh start because it was exposed so loudly and in such details that there's no way that anybody who used or misused resources could continue that. So this should be a really fresh start, and the government would have to go, with totally new strategies for state-owned companies. But again, from a human point of view, a lot of Ukrainians, of course, been very much demotivated and depressed because, in Kyiv and, central and eastern Ukraine, people are sitting without light and electricity, for 12 hours, for 14 hours, for 10 hours. And then when you see it in the media, that really not helping at all. but this should be considered as domestic thing. A president is as somebody I know very closely for these years, and I didn't know him before I joined the government personally. So we just spent this time throughout the war, facing different challenges. He's such not a person, to be even looked as somebody who's around that. So he's such a different person, and let's not forget that he didn't came to the position of president from politics. He was a successful, self-made, wealthy businessman. He's not somebody who would really be dealing with these things. So I really wish him strength, to face this challenge, and I only wish that there nobody who could feel that there is an impunity because of some positions or stakes they have in the state.
So, Madam Ambassador, we have come to the end of our time. I can't imagine anybody giving a more powerful representation of what Ukraine is about and its fortitude and resilience. Why Ukraine still is successful in fighting. So we're so grateful to you for joining us, and thank you on behalf of all of us.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh. Thank you, David.